recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand over the webcast to Ted.
Great, thank you, Gareth. I am psyched to be here. So, as some of you know the story, a couple years ago, I got an email from LinkedIn saying, congratulations for working with Demopoulos Associates for 28 years. Like, what? I've been a consultant for 28 years? No way. And I started thinking, and the most common questions people had been asking me over the last 20 plus years weren't on asymmetric crypto or buffer overflows or anything like that. We're like, hey man, you're a consultant. How do you get clients? How do you figure out what to charge them? And questions like that. And I'd always said the same thing. I'd always said, I don't know. This is what works for me. And so I started asking other consultants, and a good half my friends that I hang out with regularly, now hang out with over Zoom, are consultants. And I started putting material together, and I started putting together talks, and this has become a full class. And this is the most popular part of the class, the getting clients deep dive part, where we just dive into how to get clients. It's not the most important thing necessarily, but it's one of the most important things in consulting for sure. Now, this is also a SANS hosted 2-day class. Obviously, they got canceled because we're not running live events right now. We're in somewhat tough times, right? I have run it in the past multiple times as an online class, and boy, some of the people that have taken it have become really successful. You know some of them. Tim Medine, Doc Blackburn, he just started full-time this year. Russell Eubanks just started in the last month or so, a few weeks in the midst of this. Mike Muir, now Mike really helped me write this as well as sitting through the class. Mick Douglas has done wonderful things and has gone full-time since taking this class. David Cizilli, that some of you know, and so forth, and have all helped me make the class better. Absolutely. Now, I am running this online. This is the obligatory sales part. It'll be brief. June 2 to 11th, 4 half-day sessions. It's a little hard to find on the SANS website right now, but we're fixing that really quickly. It is there. You can sign up. I've also got a security 401 security essentials. Now, we're doing these both in the live online format, which is new. It's really cool. It's not like just recorded or the old VLive. We've got so much interaction. In fact, we set up Slack channels so people are talking to each other. It's worked out way better than I thought it ever was going to be quite honest. It's been very good. But first, an update, and let's dive right in, okay? Times are obviously tough and strange right now. A lot of our friends have lost their jobs. I have a lot of friends in the service industries, chefs, bartenders, and so forth. Man, it's really tough for them. People in the restaurant business. Just talked to a friend of mine that owns a restaurant. It's tough. A lot of us have been furloughed. People have been laid off, positions deleted. A lot of consultants have lost work. I'll be honest, I lost 90% of my work almost overnight. I've quickly replaced it with new work. And so far, I haven't taken a financial hit. I'm going to argue that maybe being an established consultant is more secure than being an employee or a contractor. Most contractors have one client, right? I have multiple clients. Risk is spread out. If one client has no work, if SANS suddenly went belly up, and they're not going to, right? I've got other things I can do. It's not like I've lost my job. So I'm going to argue maybe being a consultant, at least an established consultant, is more secure than an employee. Now, is this a bad time to start consulting? Okay, whether you want to or maybe you need to. I have some friends that have lost their jobs that are looking for consulting work. Okay, first of all, there is no perfect time. I started consulting during a recession in 1990. When the recovery occurred, it was called a jobless recovery. That's what they called it. And there were like thousands of technical people out there who are unemployed claiming, I am a consultant. Competition. No, they weren't consultants, but that sounds better than I'm looking for a job, right? Which is okay. A lot of companies started when times were bad. Thomas Edison might have been a genius, but man, he started General Electric in 1890, a global recession. A few years later, the US economy collapsed. GE still alive and doing well. Disney, although Roy and Walt did do some work literally in their uncle's garage, some illustrations and cartooning, they incorporated Disney we know started during the Great Depression. CNN, right? Cable news network. Man, this was a radical idea, 24-hour news. If you're old enough to remember this, news was never 24 hours. No way. Started during what they called the double dip recession. Apple started during a downturn, and the Apple that we know today started in 2001, and of course the dot-com crash happened in 2000, right? There's never a perfect time, but there are some good things that get started when times are bad. So let's just dive in. Okay, so I've taken this section, session 2 from the class. I've cut a lot of information out so that I can fit everything. It's still going to be a very jam-packed hour. Hopefully we'll have some time for questions in the end. If not, you can certainly email me questions and I'll even answer them in a hopefully somewhat timely fashion. So the materials have been modified and condensed just to give you as much as we can. Let's go. You need clients, right? Now, here's some things I didn't know. You don't need a lot of clients to be a very successful consultant. You do not. I thought you'd need lots of clients. You know why you don't need a lot? Some clients will stay clients for a long time. And some clients will give you a lot of work. Now, it might be for a little while or it might be a long time. The clients that give you work for a long time, tend to call them mothership clients. It's not my term. David Chappell, a fellow consultant, came up with this. So when I first started consulting, my first client was the so-called Open Software Foundation. For 8 years, they gave me a lot of work. Digital Equipment Corporation, 8 years. Then they were bought by Compaq, who gave me work, and then they were bought by HP, who gave me a little work as well. They were a long-term client. SANS, I've been doing things with SANS for over 16 years. They are right now my biggest client. We'll see about this year because obviously training's changed a lot. Man, SANS is doing some great things in the training space right now. This pivoting to this live online format with the multiple communication channels for students and instructors and other companies, Cisco, IBM, the Singapore Ministry of Education, the Royal Hong Kong Jockey Club, they dropped the Royal now. The UK Post Office, I also worked at the Hong Kong Post Office, and lots of others have been multi-year clients. So you don't need that many clients, but you need clients, right? You do. Now, there's two possibilities. One is clients come to you. That's ideal. We'll look at some real examples from way back to like really recently. Why are they going to come to you? Well, they need to know you, or at least know you exist. Maybe because they already know you personally, right? Or maybe you're an acknowledged expert. Maybe you wrote the book on the topic, or maybe a great article they found online, or maybe you have a YouTube video, right? I know there's one of you that signed up that has like 40 hours of offensive YouTube videos. Oh, that almost sounds bad. They're offensive. They're hacking videos. They're hack the box videos, right? They're not, hopefully not truly offensive. Or you can go to the clients, sometimes called outbound marketing. Now, some of this is really easy, right? It's not hard to contact past colleagues and friends and say, hey, what's up? And yeah, we'll give examples. Other types of outbound marketing. Hey, this counts, right? This counts as outbound marketing, and you can probably tell from my voice, but I'm having fun, you know? Now, sometimes some kinds of outbound marketing are tough. Cold calling on the phone, I'm never going to do that. By the way, guess what? It still works in some cases, but yeah, I'm not doing that. So let's just back up a little bit. We're talking about marketing, okay? There's different ways to define marketing. Okay? I love marketing. Sales, I don't like so much. I don't even like the concept of sales, but marketing. It's the action or business of promoting and selling products or services using market research and advertising. So what's market research? It's just looking to go see what people are buying and selling. What kind of, in consulting, it's like, what services do people need? Who are the people buying the services you provide? Now, if you're a consultant, the product or service is, it's you, right? So marketing means just making yourself look good. How? By doing good things, by putting your best foot forward. Doing good things, helping others is the best marketing. Now, from market research, I can tell you 3 currently hot areas in consulting are listed here. I know my friend Jake, Malware Jake, tweeted out, I don't know, a month or 2 ago, if anybody had DFIR skills, he had work for them like immediately. I think it was about 2 months ago. We see things like this all the time. Penetration testing is a hot area. And, you know, pen testing, it's not that hard. It just isn't. Privacy. Now, I find privacy fascinating. I find complying with things like GDPR to be less than fascinating. It's not security, but it's certainly related. There's a lot of work in that area. Now, I'm not saying you should be consulting in these areas, but we know that there's a lot of opportunities there. And if you have skills there and you like those areas, that's an awesome thing. Now let's talk about 11 ways to get clients. I'm going to start from the simplest, having clients contact you. I love this one quote. Nobody's ever hired someone they've never heard of before, right? People need to know you exist to contact you. Now, before we dive into these 11 ways, who are the most likely people to hire you, either as a consultant or even full-time? Okay, there is risk in hiring people, right? There's absolutely risk. If you hire a consultant and they do a bad job and it makes you look bad, if you hire a full-time employee and they're bad, and not all hires are going to be good. I've hired and fired. It's not my favorite thing to do. It's not my forte, let's say. But you hire somebody bad, it looks bad on you. There's risk. But if you've worked with them before and you know they're decent, they're respectable, they're professional, they're good, they're trustworthy, there's less risk. That's why it's so much easier to convince someone you've worked with before to hire you. You don't really want to convince them. You want them to be convinced. Now, I have no doubt you've all worked with people before, right? So who are they and where are they now? Let them know you're alive. I like to say that ideally before someone starts consulting, they have 5 years of experience, because experience is good, right? But even more so because you know more people. You've worked with more people, and they're the ones most likely to hire you, absolutely, initially. So ideally, clients come to you. I just sit there and things, just sort of show up and people come with work. And this does happen. It doesn't happen as often as most of us would like. But in order for clients to come to you, they need, first of all, to know who you are, okay? They need to know that you can help them. You have the skills, and they have to trust you'll actually do this. Now, they do not need to like you. They do not need to be your friends. They just need to respect you. I've worked with people that I never became friends with, right? In some cases, we just didn't get to know each other well enough or didn't have enough in common or whatever. But I respected them. I would gladly hire them as a consultant or anything else if I needed something done and they had the skills. I hired a guy. I actually didn't like the guy. He's very abrasive. But it was when I bought a house and there was a problem with a septic tank, and to have it replaced or repaired, I needed like permission, and it was near wetlands. And this guy was an ordinary old dude. He was not overly pleasant, but guess what? He was pretty professional. He was extremely good. I was happy to hire him because I knew he could help me and I trusted him to be professional. So let's look at examples of clients coming to me. Okay, so I left my job at Hewlett-Packard in 1990. Okay, I was already planning on leaving. I had a plan. I was going to go travel for a few months. I was going to take, let's call it a sabbatical. I was going to go screw around. I wanted to travel. And then I was going to try out consulting afterwards. As a matter of fact, I even had a plane flight set up. I was going to fly into Taipei, Taiwan, because I could get a free flight there. And I was coming back allegedly six or 8 weeks later from Thailand, and I knew I probably was going to miss that flight. But I wanted to go see Southeast Asia, and I was able to book that for free with points. Well, it turns out several former colleagues, people I had worked with at Hewlett-Packard, had gone to an industry consortium called the Open Software Foundation. They hosted an event. They had a talk on this new technology things they were working on. And the speaker was good, and he knew his stuff, but some of the things he talked about, I had more of a background. So there are some questions people had that he couldn't answer very well, that I could, because I had a background in security. And guess what? They were like, man, we know Ted. Ted knows his stuff. We know people. He knows more about some things than the guy we've got doing this now. And they offered me work really quickly. Now, originally, they offered me full-time work. And I was like, look, I got a job. And I'm planning on leaving the job. But I want to go travel around for a while. And I don't want a full-time. So they offered me consulting, right? Now, why this happened? Because I stayed in touch with them when they left. It's not hard to keep in touch with former colleagues. As a matter of fact, most of them were and still are friends now 30 years later. Absolutely. So just staying in touch with people. Here's another example, a few years later. Now, this is before cell phones were common. I was staying in a friend's place in Los Angeles. Okay, I had spoken at the IBM conference. It was Sunday night, and we're going to hang out in the LA area. Actually, he was in Huntington Beach, I believe. And we're going to hang out there for a couple of days. And my plan was to go to Baja, Mexico, and travel around. And I'd been studying Spanish, and I got a phone call. This guy, Bob. I met Bob once at a conference. We'd hit it off. We might have even had a beer or two that evening. Company called Gradient in Marlborough, Massachusetts. He tracked me down. He actually found my parents' number. There aren't that many Demopouloses, right? He used probably the physical phone book. I'm not sure. Might have looked it up online. We are talking 90s. From my mother, got the number where I was, called me up. I talked to him. Of course, I remembered him. He said, hey, I've got a client friend, this guy Howard, and he's just got this problem. You can probably just talk to him and take care of it. Now, it turns out Howard was just happened to be local. He was just a few miles away in Torrance, California. I called Howard up. I was like, sure, I'll call Howard. I'm just hanging out. I was hanging out, probably having a beer with my friend Kenny. Howard and I hit it off. Howard's a great guy. He was like, hey, can you come in tomorrow, which was Monday for the day? His logo was like, yeah, I can do that. Sure, why not? I went in. Now, I never made it to Mexico. I ended up working with Howard for 12 weeks on this pretty neat proposal where we developed a prototype system in healthcare, and it was awesome. Never made it to Mexico until about 18 months ago. But this, so I didn't do one cool thing, but I did another cool thing. And he came to me, right? We had hit it off. And it's interesting, a few years back, now this job was for TRW officially. TRW was bought by Northrop Grumman. I went back to the same actual building to do SANS training for Northrop Grumman, and it was pretty neat. Now, here's a surprising one. I did not belong at Hewlett-Packard. Okay? They were a very good company, great company. I was not with them in their glory years, I'll be honest. They were all good people, though, but they hadn't hired me. I hadn't accepted. I didn't fit in that well. I worked for a small company they bought. But when I left on really good terms. I went out of my way to cause as least disruption when I left. I gave my notice when it was going to cause at least disruption. I told them I would stay longer if I wanted. After I left, I went back a few times, saw my old group, right? Lunch a couple times, dinner once over the next few months, not a lot. It's kind of funny. They didn't throw a going away party for me, but they threw one for someone else and invited me. It was kind of funny. So they knew how to contact me, right? They knew I was a consultant, and they knew from experience I was a trustworthy professional. They hired me as a consultant to do some of the work I had been doing before. This one totally shocked me. I did not expect this at all. Another one, college friend Gardner. I ran into him online. I didn't know he worked for Gartner. I didn't know what he did. We had lost track of each other for years. I reached out to him. I was like, hey, Mark, what's up, man? Turns out he was working for Gartner. He referred me to the Defense Contract Management Agency, which is part of the DoD. Somebody called me from the DoD. They had some work. They actually had a keynote speech they wanted for a few $1,000. Great talk. And he told me there was a committee that was going to make the decision. But, I was like prime candidate. Turns out when he called me, he didn't even know how to spell Demopoulos. Most of you probably can't spell it either, which is okay. But after he talked to me, he knew how to spell my name. He Googled me, found some things I had written online. Or I had some content online. He was impressed. He called me right back and he said, I'm in charge of the committee. If you want the work, it's yours. Now, here's an interesting one. Okay, I literally got this email. Hello, no name, and it's kind of generic, right? Now, this is a well-known conference. You can use your OPSEC skills if you want and figure out who it is. I got this late Friday night. Okay, I sometimes don't answer emails late at night to people I haven't communicated with before because sometimes I send stupid emails when I'm tired. The next morning, I think I left at 7 a.m. or 6:30 or something real early to go skiing with my 16-year-old. She's upstairs right now. And so I didn't answer. I was going to answer when I came back that night. On the chairlift, I get a LinkedIn message from Andrew that works with the same conference. And I'm like, hey, Andrew, I've gotten an email from so-and-so. I haven't answered it yet. I'm on a chairlift right now, which kind of impressed him that I was answering right away. Well, to shorten the whole story, I didn't talk on Saturday. Saturday, I replied to the email when I got back. Sunday, I was flying all day from Miami from my hotel. We spoke at 8 p.m. at night. And they were like, great, come speak. And I had a few $1,000s in they actually PayPal'd me money. They sent me half the fee up front. Now notice, it was kind of a generic message. He was probably really busy, but I replied. I should have replied more quickly. Replying quickly is important. Now, it's very easy to reach out to people you know, right? You might just say hello, or you might let them know something specific. A lot of times it's easier if you have a specific reason, sometimes, right? And just asking people to lunch works. Tony Corrado, long-term consultant, I worked with him a lot in Hong Kong. He got all his clients by having lunch. Now, he hated traveling. He was in Hong Kong. He wasn't going anywhere. At least twice a week, he'd take off and go have lunch with somebody. And that was it was his direct outreach. That's how he got all of his work. Now, obviously, having lunch doesn't scale that well. You need local presence. I'm in rural New Hampshire. That's not going to work that well for me, right? But if you're in New York City or San Francisco or somewhere, it can work, especially if you don't want to travel. Now, right now, Tim Medine, who is a consultant, very successful, he's an alumni of this class, has been hosting occasional Zoom lunches. I have yet to make one with Tim, but I probably will, right? So he's actually doing Zoom lunches now, and everyone says they're fun. So this is actually from my friend Pierre Noel. It says an email today. It didn't happen today. It was today when I wrote this slide. He was finishing he was a chief security and privacy officer for a company, and it was actually Huawei, the massive telecommunications giant. He was living in Singapore. He was supposed to be in Shanghai, but he lived where he wanted to. He was actively looking for more work, right? And did I have any pointers and a little information? Now, a few key points about this. Pierre did not reach out to me after not having heard from him for years and years just because he needed something. We were in regular touch with each other. Like every month, sometimes maybe not 6 months. Every once in a while, I may not hear from him for a year, but we were in semi-regular touch with each other. And it's like all of a sudden, I know he's good. And did I send him some pointers? Yeah, I had a couple. And he ended up finding work without too much difficulty. First 2 weeks when I had stopped working, or when I was about to work, I started telling everybody I was going to consult. Everybody, certainly all my professional colleagues and associates and friends and the mailman, the bartender, the neighbor's babysitter. I told everybody, right? It doesn't hurt to tell everybody. As a matter of fact, I got some interesting work from a high school friend I had reached out to like 2 years later that wouldn't have known I was alive if I hadn't found him when I started telling everyone in the world. Now, I used the telephone a lot because we're talking 1990. Most people didn't have email. Okay, most technical people did. I certainly did. I'd been using email a long time in 1990. Today, we'd probably make fewer phone calls, maybe some text, throw in some social media, whatever the communications flavors of the era are. If it had been 20 years before, who knows? Maybe it would have been faxing people, telling them, "Hey, I'm starting working." Another example: the first modern version of Windows NT. I was interested in this because compared to Windows 3.1, it's actually reasonably secure in comparison. I wrote a course on it, and I just reached out to some people that I thought might be interested. It was new technology. Hey, I just put this together. Wasn't even done yet. I sold lots of the course. I even licensed it to somebody non-competitively. They couldn't compete with me for $18,000, and there was some follow-on consulting. And I remember before I had started consulting, this guy, Dave Beckendorf, he was one of the first consultants I met. Now, I was in no position to hire him, but he reached out around New Year's. It was just reached out, called me on the phone, say, hey, happy holidays. It's kind of a non-denominational. I'm sure he probably called 100 or 150 people just to let him know he's still alive. And he did. It's like, oh, yeah, I remember Dave. He's a really good guy. He's really smart. If you write something people might be interested in, tell them. So way back, I did a survey on phishing before people knew much about what phishing was. It was fairly new. I did a survey about it. I just asked people what they thought. I walked around with a clipboard. Today, I'd probably do it online, right? And it got me a lot of attention. I told people about it. Number 6, I came up with this one. I actually think this is almost brilliant because it works. It's worked for me. Okay, in your career, even if you've only worked for 3 years or 2 years or 20 years or whatever, there are going to be some people you worked with that you loved working with. You absolutely loved working with them. Guaranteed, right? There's some really cool people. Why did you love working? Maybe you hit it off. Maybe the project was awesome. Who knows why? Just ping them, say, hey, remember we did this work together? And that was just like one of my highlights of the year or my career. That was just great. I hope we get a chance to work together again someday. And there's bound to be some people like that. And guess what? If you would love to work again with them someday, most of them probably would really like to work with you again. And if you're starting consultant, you might mention that. Or if you're not sure, you won't mention that. If you're an established consultant, they know what you do. Just letting people know that you're alive. This works really well, by the way. I've had people come through the class just doing this, just making a list, saying, here's 10 people I'd love to work with again, just reaching out to them. They're not all going to answer, right? Because we're all busy, but that's okay. People have gotten work this way. Now, even if you're talking to someone a lot, maybe you're good friends, sometimes it's hard to transition to a talk about work. This can definitely be tough. At least it is for me. Right, there's this guy, David A. Fields. David A. Fields is a management consultant, and he's written a book called something like the Ultimate Consultant's Guide to Getting Clients or something. I recommend the book, although it's not directly targeted at technical or security consultants, but it's good. Now, put this in your own words, right? But you say something like, hey, would you be open to having a separate conversation where we can talk about your business and whether I can help you achieve your goals? Right, of course, in your own words. So low pressure. Now, a lot of people are going to say, yeah, let's talk about it now, or yeah, let's talk next week, or some people might say, no, I don't really want to talk about it. And that's fine too, but this is just so easy, right? So easy to do, so low pressure. There's nothing salesy about this. There's nothing, nervous or uptight about this at all. I just think that's brilliant that he came up with this. Now, you can also reach out to people you don't know. Okay, this is harder for most of us. It absolutely works. And salespeople do it all the time, but it's not just for salespeople. This can be really effective for consultants. There's a guy who works with consultants. His name is, I just got an email from him. I've met him once, I had dinner with him. Robert Middleton. He's actually got some great free stuff online too. Robert Middleton. You can Google him if you want. He actually teaches specifically direct outreach for consultants on how to get clients. That's like his whole gig these days. And he's really good. I mean, he knows his stuff. So let's look at some examples. My friend Joe Hewer. Joe Hewer works in healthcare most of the time. Joe's interesting because when McAfee was running from the law in Belize, Joe was doing the same thing. The only difference is Joe's not crazy, at least not most of the time. He was down there doing some volunteer work. He's really big on volunteers with orphanages and so forth. Now, when he does work, he does a lot of paid keynotes, usually for $5,000 and up. For a state chapter of an association, and there's lots of associations, we'll talk more about them soon, he'll call presidents of other state associations and have a brief conversation, say, hey, I just did this for your colleague or your equivalent or whatever terminology they use in Nebraska. I just thought I'd let you know in case, I can help you with something like this. Now, he'll also walk directly into association offices. He's in the state capitol. He's in Lansing, Michigan. He'll walk directly in just out of the blue and ask who's in charge of booking keynote speakers, and very respectfully, very politely ask if he could have 2 minutes of their time. It works. This one sounds a little harder to me, but I could see doing this, and he really does keep it to 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, he's gone unless they insist he stays and talks more. And man, they book him based on this. They give him work, keynotes, follow-on work, and so forth. Now, here's a not so great example, but it's got some good elements to it. This is an email I got. Hi, sir, madam. I hope you're doing well, blah, blah, blah. Okay. First of all, this might legally constitute spam. It's certainly spammy. It's certainly, they've sent this to lots of people. Instead of hi, sir / madam, they could have found my name. It's in my email. It's ted@demop.com. Right? So it's like, that's not a lot of work, but it does start, I hope you're doing well. It starts informally. It makes it very clear what they want. Want to reach out and see if you have a few minutes to chat. They say what they do, and they say, do you have a few minutes to chat this week or next? So there are, even in this not great example, there are some things they do well, right? It's informal. You know exactly what they want, and you know what they do. And I'm sure this worked for them. Now, I'm not suggesting we do anything like this. We can learn both the good and the bad in outreach. And the fact that it's informal is just awesome. It's like they're talking to a friend, even though it's spammy. A couple other examples. Survey I mentioned before I did on phishing. I reached out, emailed to people I didn't know who thought they might be interested. Interestingly, some people thought I was trying to phish them with my phishing survey. Mike Muir, right? Mike's been a consultant a long time, teaches with SANS as well. He reaches out to people on LinkedIn. Not these spammy messages you probably get on LinkedIn, but both has conversations via comments on articles and posts, and sometimes directly reaching out via messages. Only after initial conversation does he possibly talk about business and whether it makes sense to talk about possibly working together. He doesn't send something immediately trying to say, hey, I want to talk to you about this. I can help you get more leads, or I can help you with this. No, nothing like that. Now, referrals are an awesome way to get work. You ask for referrals. Some referrals will happen naturally. We should ask for them. So if you have existing clients, Now, how you ask is important. Is there anywhere else in the organization I could provide value? Or, hey, is there anyone else here you can think of that I might be able to help? Right? You're offering to help. Among colleagues, if you know anyone I can help, just introduce us. Sometimes you can be very specific. With one friend who I had done some work with, I said, hey, can you introduce me to your equivalent in Asia Pacific? It's like, oh yeah, Maurice. Yeah, I was just talking to him this morning. Of course I can. Right, that was asking for a very specific referral. And and you might even say, yeah, if it's not convenient to introduce me, do you mind if I reach out and mention your name? Now, if you have a new client and you're working on a project, we seem to naturally think we have to wait till the project is done to ask for referrals. I like to wait until significant progress has been done and it looks like a success. Things are going well, right? Which is no doubt partially because of you, at least, right? Now, you can also ask for referrals in your local community. I don't do this as much because I live in a rural area in New Hampshire, and quite honestly, I don't do much work. Actually, I do no work in New Hampshire or Maine, which are the two places I live. I used to way back. But other professionals, when you normally interact with them, your doctor, your lawyer. I just interacted with my accountant. I have a doctor's appointment coming up. I wonder if it's going to be online or or in person. It's in about a month. I'm dealing with a lawyer right now. I'm updating my will. He knows what I do, right? It's just you remind him what you do, and it's like, hey, if there's anyone I can help, just send them to me, or whatever language is natural for you. Generally works better in a metropolitan area, but it can work anywhere. It's interesting, some of the high-level executives and so forth that come in vacation where I am, even though I'm fairly rural here. Now, volunteering is not the fastest way, but it's a great way. Okay, lots of Infosec organizations, conferences, user groups. Look for volunteers. Even as a newbie, you'll absolutely meet and interact with senior people, and you're going to meet them as peers, right? Now they qualify as people you've worked with. If you're volunteering, you still do a professional job, right? They're more likely to hire you. Works especially well if you volunteer over and over at the same place. I should do more of this. I do some of this for sure. I used to travel a lot for work until not too long ago, which made it harder in some senses to volunteer. Harder, but I have done some with local groups for sure, and with not so local groups. Also, being saying I work with, I don't know, ShmooCon or DEF CON or whatever, it adds a lot of credibility for sure. You can also volunteer for other good causes, charities, and so forth. This is a very common way historically to drum up business. A lot of high-level executives often volunteer. I've done some volunteering for Special Olympics in swimming in New Hampshire, for example. Now, if you're working with a CEO or some other high-level exec, they're probably not going to hire you, but someone 2 levels down might, and if they say, hey, you should go talk to Ted Demopoulos, maybe he can help us. I've had this happen. When the boss's boss says, hey, go look at this guy, maybe he can help us, they're not going to be asking you what you charge. They're going to be asking, can you help us? And of course, best to volunteer because you believe in the cause. And that's one of the reasons I was involved in Special Olympics. Now, speaking, it says briefly, and that's because we've got in the next session, which of course is in the full class, we talk a lot more about speaking. Now, some of you are going to say, no way, I can't speak. It's like this, we have this fear of speaking. Many of us do. Okay, but you know what? Speaking's easy. No one's asking you to speak for 6 hours or 10 hours a day for 6 days like some SANS boot camps. A speaker is considered an expert just because you're speaking, and you have high visibility even if people aren't there listening to you. And speaking is not hard. Right? Anyone can speak. You get better at speaking by speaking. There's a group called Toastmasters, a nonprofit. Toastmasters has, trying to type it in. Toastmasters has branches all over the place, even in rural areas. It's dirt cheap, and they teach skills like speaking, and you're speaking in front of a friendly audience. It's helping you get better. We all have things, all have experiences and knowledge to share. I can tell you there are some SANS instructors who get essentially all of their clients, and a lot of SANS instructors are full-time consultants, maybe 60%, maybe 70%, I'm not sure, who get all of their clients through speaking, or at least the vast majority. Writing. Okay, writer is considered an expert. By the way, I just proposed a webinar to SANS on how to write a book. I'm on book 3.5 or book 4 right now. If you've written the book on the subject, man, does that give you credibility and visibility? Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I always hated writing. I was always a really bad writer. I was a math. I did math in college. You know why I was a math major? No papers, no labs, and labs had to be written up because, I mean, I was a horrible writer. English isn't even my first language. I found out that I don't hate writing if I'm not forced to it like I was in school. And I've actually found I've learned to write pretty well, you know, compared to where I was before. I'm no Dan Brown. Right? Dan's local. I went to high school with Dan. He writes a little better than I do. He's made a little more money writing as well, but learning to write reasonably well is a learned skill. And there's things like editors too. You don't need to write a book. You can write articles, lots of other things. You can author a blog, you can author a video and so forth, and gives you a lot of credibility. Networking. Okay, first of all, let's step back. I'm an introvert. I'm a classic introvert. Many of my friends don't believe me. Introvert doesn't mean not social. If we're at a SANS conference and I'm like in the bar hanging out and talking to people, and you know, they're early in the morning drinking coffee with people and sometimes even organizing outings to see in whatever city we're in. That's hard to do with boot camps though, which I teach a lot of. I'm doing that when I'm well rested and psyched. If I'm tired, I go hide in my hotel room or in my apartment. I'm a classic introvert. Extroverts, on the other hand, are very outgoing all the time. They're better at networking. Now, networking, even for an introvert, is easy because there's so many opportunities. It's also hard because it takes time. Now, networking is about helping others. You're raising your visibility, but you're doing it by helping others. And there's roughly 3 types. First of all, networking people you're already friendly with, maybe actual friends, okay? This is simple. You stay in touch, occasional direct outreach, right? I got a group of people that I used to hang out with. I've worked with all of them in various companies. We haven't worked together in maybe 15 years or so. We get together at least once a year. There's 4 of us. We get together and have dinner somewhere. And we hear from each other every once in a while, and they've referred me to places and so forth, and maybe I'll work with them again someday. I love working with them. We also have people we've worked with that they're not friends. We don't know them well enough, or maybe we don't have enough in common. They're acquaintances. They're probably good people, right? Now, some of them might not want to get to know you. Most are friendly, right? Ask them to lunch, go for a drink, go grab a coffee. I always tell people in my live SANS classes, hey, you know, go to lunch with someone you don't know. Don't just like, if you just like a work person you came with, don't only hang out with them. Ask someone else out to lunch or something like that. This is not hard, right? It's not like they're big, scary people. Then we've also got networking events. I don't necessarily love networking events. Some are okay, some are fun. Now, the key thing here is you don't just talk to people you know. Right, look for a friendly face or somebody standing alone and just walk up and say, hey, how you doing? Or something. This isn't hard. Be interested in the person. Okay, most people are interesting, have something interesting about it. And if you decide like they're really boring, they only want to talk about, I'm not making this example up, their belly button lint collection and how they want to get in the Guinness World Book of Records for collecting belly button lint, and you're horrified or maybe bored, okay, you don't have to keep talking to them. exchange contact info and follow up, right? And this is so easy to do with like LinkedIn and other social media these days, right? If they're not that interesting or whatever, or you're not going to follow up with everybody, but with a few people. Some of my best friends I've just like ran across in conferences and so forth. We've stayed in touch. Some of them have been incredibly nice people. Now, I mentioned associations before. You know, there's a trade association for more than everything that you can imagine. Let's say you have a client in one big space. Maybe it's manufacturing of some kind, or insurance, or healthcare, or whatever. Or maybe you have multiple clients or experience in one of these verticals. There will be at least one associated trade group. Let's look at some really bizarre examples just to show you how diverse they are. Let's say you work with hair loss physicians, or I guess it would be hair replacement physicians. You know they have a trade group? They have an association? Yeah, pretty active from my understanding. You know one of the wildest associations is funeral directors? They have a conference, or they call it a convention in Las Vegas, and they are apparently the craziest people you will ever meet. They can only have fun and smile one time a year. If you're in healthcare or manufacturing, you name almost anything, there is at least one association for that. Consider joining it, right? And don't just join, network. Maybe go to the conference. Do they have a newsletter or a journal? Maybe you can write something for it, right? Outreach to members. Maybe you can talk at their conference. I have somebody, my friend John, I'm not supposed to mention his last name. And it's interesting because there was one area he was interested in. He just liked that area and he had no experience there. But he was the only one speaking at their conference on security in their space. And he got 2 gigs. He's consulting on the side right now from doing that. Now, there's also advertising. Okay, I do not suggest you start with advertising at all. There's 2 types of advertising, okay, first of all. There's direct response, where you're trying to get people to take an action, maybe click on a link or fill out a form or, watch a video. There's also brand advertising. We don't do brand advertising. That's like Super Bowl ads and stuff like that. We're much more likely to use direct response. Generally, you're getting potential clients to somehow opt in, give you some information to get some value. Now, this is a multi-step sales process. There's a gentleman, I'm a big fan of his, who actually teaches consultants how to do this. I'm just going to mention his name. Brilliant guy. Very amusing. This guy's a riot. He's got stuff all over the internet. Frank Kern. Frank doesn't know me, but I don't think he knows me. Brilliant man. That's what he does. Now, let me give you a far-out example of a friend of mine that does this. Michael Walker was a rock and roll musician, okay? A successful rock star. By successful, he made a really good living touring with his band. And all of a sudden, he's married, which is great, and there's a baby coming, maybe a little earlier than he thought. And he's like, I'm not going to be on the road 300 days a year. What skills do I have other than playing music? Well, I know how to get gigs. I know how to make money doing this. So here's what he actually did. Michael Walker, using Facebook ads, drove people to a Google form. Say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. He did some real quick Facebook Lives. The first ones were real schmaltzy. They weren't very professional. They didn't have to be. But this is what I do, and this is what I've done, and now I'm trying to help other musicians be financially successful. And they had to answer a few questions in this form. The biggest one was whether they were willing to commit a certain amount of money to invest in their future as a musician. He's making at least the upper 6 figures right now, consulting with musicians on how to be financially successful with their music. I actually would have seen him last week if it wasn't for this coronavirus thing, because a couple times a week we're at a business conference together. Right, it's multi-step. You don't have an ad. People click on the ad and they immediately give you money. Like, that's not likely to happen. But advertising is not a newbie technique, although he did it as a newbie. It's not in our field. But it has to be mentioned because, man, it can really work and it scales. Referral and subcontracting arrangements. Now, referrals are just an awesome way to get work. And if somebody's referring you a lot of work, whether it's formal subcontracting or not, right, you might want to have some sort of a formal arrangement. I know there's a couple organizations that do pen testing that have told me, hey, Ted, you run into people that need pen testing done, send them our way. And these are people I know are good. And, and we'll give you, a slight percentage. We'll pay you something. Now, it turns out I sent them some work, but not enough for them, for us to hassle with having an official arrangement. It's like, I'll send you people you can help. That's okay. But if I could send them a lot, that would be worth having some sort of a referral arrangement. And I've had this with others where they've given me work and they've usually marked it up a little bit, right? And they've done some work. They've added value by easing the transactions. You can also find sometimes one organization might use you extensively to represent them to their clients or their customers. I've done this with a lot of people. I did this with the Open Software Foundation, with Hewlett-Packard, with Digital Equipment Corporation, with the Royal Hong Kong Jockey Club, and with others. That can be an absolutely fantastic relationship. And often these are very long-lived relationships as well. So what techniques are going to work for you? Okay, I don't know, right? I don't know what's going to work for you. Also, I don't know what you're going to enjoy doing. I can tell you as an example, I do not get a lot of consulting work from speaking at SANS events. I don't. I get some, right? I get some. There's other consultants that, for whatever reason, from speaking at SANS events, get a lot. I have lunch with a lot of people when I can. That doesn't get me a lot of work, maybe some. My friend Tony Corrado, that was how he got all his clients. I know a lawyer who works in Infosec. He's a member of the bar and he works in Infosec. He used to get most of his clients through blogging online about legal issues in Infosec. That's not working for him anymore. He's using other techniques now. So you try a bunch of things. Whatever you enjoy working and it works, you keep doing it. If you hate speaking, maybe you try it and you're like, man, this isn't for me. You give it a real try and it's like, I hate this. I'm not going to do this again. You don't have to, right? It's not like this is the way it works. There's so many techniques. Now remember, you don't need a lot of clients to be successful. You need some. Right, at least one, hopefully a couple in case something happens to that one. Sometimes clients are amazingly easy to get. They almost fall in your lap. Other times it's tough. And I'll tell you, the time when clients just start showing up on your doorstep is kind of like when you don't need them, right? It's harder to get your first few clients. Now, a few things we have coming up. First of all, if people don't have my book, Infosec Rockstar, which has a lot of great skills for consultants, including visibility, don't buy it. Well, you can go buy it if you want it. I'm giving an updated talk on May 18th, and I almost promise there'll be a free book for all attendees. I'm working on this with my publisher. I wasn't allowed to do this before. I know I gave a lot of free books away, a lot of books for shipping and handling. Also, tomorrow, I'm speaking tomorrow, yeah, on crypto. Crypto Essentials Made Simple. It's one of the most popular talks I ever gave from a couple years ago. Now back to consulting. I've got 23 different consulting videos on YouTube. They're all short. They're like 2 to 5 minutes, very easy to digest. We're all busy. I'm going to claim, and I've claimed this before, I'm putting up one up for a week, but I haven't in a while. But the goal is I will be adding things there. And we have the full class on successful InfoSec consulting. I've run it 3 times before. I've run it online. This is the first one we're running together officially with SANS. 4 half-day sessions. It is online. You can sign up. It's a little hard to find on the website right now. They may have fixed that by now. As you might know, we're having tough times, and everybody is, and SANS has done a great job of changing the website around and pivoting to, essentially all online training. So I've consulted now for a little over 30 years. it was one of the best choices I ever made, one of the best decisions. Even if I had started consulting and had decided it wasn't for me, I don't like this, and had gone back and gotten a full-time job, it would have been the right decision for me because I had to try it. Now, today, I'm not suggesting anyone quit their job and just dive full-time into consulting. However, for people that are interested in it, building consulting skills are great. Number of reasons. One, you may want to at some point in the future. Two, you may find a great opportunity in consulting. Maybe you find the perfect job, the perfect work, but they don't want a full-time employee. They want a consultant. And you're like, okay, I know how to do that. I've got the skills. I understand how that works. And of course, a lot of people, including a lot of SANS instructors, consult on the side and have a full-time job. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for being here. And if there's any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Thanks for that awesome presentation, Ted. We've currently got no direct questions, but we've got a lot of sort of complimentary comments. Obviously, there's Ted's email address in the chat section, as well as q@sans.org. So if you do think of any questions, feel free to email us. And with that, I just want to say a big thank you to Ted for your awesome presentation, which helps bring this content to the SANS community. And I want to thank you as well, the listeners. We greatly appreciate you listening in. For schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcast. Until next time, take care, and we hope to see you back again at the next SANS webcast.